What's up guys, Damien here from Darcy. Today I'm just going to do a little video for you guys about the pros and cons of fifth scale. Now someone on the forum mentioned this question and I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to do a video on it. So here I have two of my fifth scales, my Baja 5B and my Red Cat Rampage MT. Now this is going to be a long video series, so I figured instead of doing all in one I would just do it in two separate videos. So this one here is the cons of it, and next I'm going to put the pros, because may as well save the best for last. Okay, so the first con, in my opinion, is they are expensive. Getting into just a 5B, just stock, you're looking at around $1,000. But that doesn't mean that you can't get a fifth scale for cheaper. The Red Cat is, I think I got this one for $600. And I like this one as much as I do like this one. There's pros and cons to both of them, but I'll explain those later. The nice thing as well is, the bad thing is with the fifth scales, is the part support can be very horrible in a lot of the hobby shops, especially the smaller ones. You might be able to find some parts for the 5B, but the Rampage, you're very, very few in between. Even the bigger ones don't have the upgrades or even some of the stock setups for the Rampage. So that's one thing that I don't like about the Rampage, is that the parts for it are so very hard to find. There are websites that you can find them on. You got to order them in. As long as you have patience, it's not a big deal. And another con, in my opinion, would be that the 5B and the 5T are two-wheel drive. Now, a lot of people may think, well, if it's not four-wheel drive, then I'm not going to ride it. Well, that's not necessarily the truth. If you watch any of the 5B videos, and if you watch, any of the 5T videos, you know that they are fun. That's the first one on my pros, is it is fun. These things are a blast. Two-wheel or four-wheel drive, they are a blast. I will give you that four-wheel drive does give you a little more options to go on terrain, but two-wheel drive is still just as fun, because you can get that back end whipping around and it's a blast. Another con that I have come across between owning a two-wheel drive and a four-wheel drive fifth scale is the four-wheel drives, they require more power. Now that's one of the hugest upgrades that you're going to need to do on these anyways, is by either getting an aftermarket pipe or getting a new engine or top end kit, or you can do both like I've done. But the biggest thing about the four-wheel drives is that they do require more power. If you watch a Rampage video, if you watch even some of the low C5T videos, you'll notice straight out of the box they're not as powerful as a two-wheel drive. They're kind of sluggish. Not necessarily they're bad kits, they're excellent kits, but just the engine that they put in them is not up to par to what they actually need to. Now there are different options you can go with. You can gear them down. Fortunately with the Rampage there's not very much you can gear down. I think there's one more gear you can go down. That's about it. And with the 5B and 5T there's lots of gearing options. So you can make this for top speed or for huge torque. So that would be an option. That would be one of the things you want to consider between going from one to the other, is that four-wheel drive does need more power to turn all four wheels. Now another con that I have come across is that they are heavy. Now a lot of people may think, well, that's not a huge deal, but when you come with heavy kits you also can leave with a lot of broken parts. I have my 5B right now. It is pretty much done. There are a few more things I want to do to it, but it is pretty much to the point where it is bulletproof. In fact, I have picked up my kit and I have flung it as hard as I can, and it still runs just fine. Nothing breaks on it. I did a lot of research into the parts that I wanted. I'm going to put another later video on upgrades that I suggest for the 5B, 5T, and even the Rampage. You can touch a little bit on the Rampage, but there's not very many upgrades you can get for the Rampage yet. There may not ever be, because it's kind of a lesser known brand. But so long as you do your research and find out what parts actually work, then you can actually make these things pretty bulletproof, and you can go away not actually broken. There was the times where I would be taking this and I would just run it in my front yard, and every time I would run it, it would break. Something would break on it. maybe if I would take a jump, something would break on it, something like one of the arms would break, or shock shafts would break, the axles would break, the drive shafts would break. So it's, you know, one of those things where it's a heavy kit. They're a lot to tug around. This one, I think stock is about 30 pounds, 34 pounds. This one here, I think is about 25. I think it's up to probably about 27 or 28 now. The parts I put. I did put some aluminum parts in here only for strength, not for anything else, not necessarily for looks. These do look good, but they also have a purpose for them, for strength. Another con that I have found is that the motor is a must upgrade. Like I was saying before, these things are overpowered when they come from stock, so you gotta throw an engine in them, or at least a top end kit, which isn't a huge deal for a lot of guys, but if you're gonna get into it and you're gonna want to put a lot of power in these things, it can get expensive. There's a 2-cylinder engine for the 5T, runs $2,000, and that's just for the engine itself. Plus you need the bracket kit to fit it on here, and then also you need the correct gearing. If you gear way too low, you're just going to burn things out. So you got to gear really high for something like that because it is insanely powerful. But in that note, you can get head kits as low as $50. You know, you can get a head kit for a 26 or even a 27 or 28 cc upgrade, even modded or even maybe ported even, and you know it's only $100, $200 maybe. You know, you can get a 30 half cc for $200, something like that. You know, so they're not necessarily overly expensive for an engine top end kit, but for a whole engine, if you want something half as decent, you're looking around $500 probably. And not necessarily it's a bad thing, but again, it's one of those expenses. First con is they are expensive, but you know, if you got the money, why the hell not, right? Another thing that I have found about the fifth scales is that they can be hard to find a place to go and run. They are big kits, so they do need a lot of room. I'm lucky enough that I live out in the country, so I have 160 acres of land that I can run around wherever I want, and so I have a ton of room that I can just rip around. When I've taken these things to town before too, and I can't even tell you how many parks I've been kicked out of because of the sound and they tear up and stuff. These lugs just absolutely just murder the ground. Like you wouldn't want to believe. Such a huge rooster tail. But given that note, if you can find a place, you know, a bike track, a dirt bike track, something like that, I'll give you a heads up right now, guys. Most tracks will not let you guys out with these on there. 2 reasons. One, especially with the 4-wheel drives, there are a little bit more of a turning radius to turn. So unless you're on a big 8 scale trail, they might be a little bit difficult to turn. The 5Bs aren't too bad. When they turn, the wheels actually come in on an angle, so they do give a tighter turning radius. But given that note, still they do tear up the yard or the track a lot more than any other RC would. So again, you got to put in that perspective where you're going to run them. So if you have a place to run them, if you know you're going to run them, if you have land, if you have property or something, go for it. You know, these things are a blast in that aspect. Another con that I have found that, not to say it's a con for me because I don't have any problems with it because I'm in the country, but neighbors sometimes might not like the noise. I have found that a lot of times when I bring these out into the town and stuff like that, if I find a park or something like that that I can go to before I get kicked out, and if I can get there and rip around, you know, give me 5-10 minutes, I have a crowd. You know, people are just circling around, watching and stuff like that, and they're coming up to me and they're asking questions and glad to answer them, you know, with no problems. And, you know, some people, they don't like the noise. I haven't had too many complaints, but, you know, some people might not like the noise of these, especially if you put a tuned pipe on the back. They are very loud. The Rampage isn't as loud. The 5B is insanely loud. But I don't know, I've heard in some forums that the louder the better because the faster it goes. But I don't know. The pipe that I got on here, it came with it when I got it, and like I got it used from a buddy, and it it's done for me what I want it to, so I keep it on there. So that's that. Another con that I have found the hard way, unfortunately, is that they are near to impossible to control in the air. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you can weight these properly. Now, the way I say weight these properly is if you have your shocks and your shock oil weighted properly. That's why you shock weight. If you have those weighted properly, you can actually have these things jump relatively good off the ramp. Depending on your ramp, depending on where you jump, you can have these jump pretty good off a ramp. Now, when you're in the air, if you try and control it, don't, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's gonna go where it wants to go. You know, I can't even, if I had a nickel for how many times I did end-to-end flips with this, or even this a little bit too, but more so much this, I would be a very wealthy man. And that's one thing that would break them too, is that, you know, you hit the corner of the tire and they'll have your turnbuckle break. So I have a reinforced turnbuckle here, haven't broke it yet. I've had arms break, have RPM's arms, never broken them. Shock shafts, broken a ton of those. And so I went with some heavy duty Fat Dad shock shafts, never broken them yet. So it's one of those things where I have found with fifth scales is you have to break it to upgrade it, in my opinion. You can put all this in aluminum, it is going to be heavy and it's not going to control very well, but it's going to look good. And you know, if that's what you're going for, that's great. I've seen guys on the forum, this one guy, he put over $10,000 into it, and it's a shelf queen. It just sits there, it looks pretty. He does not run it, and I don't blame him. But it's all about how much you want to put into it. But again, that's one of the cons. It is expensive, and it's very addicting. You want to keep these things running at all cost. So one part breaks, and you go to upgrade it, and there you go. There's $50 plus shipping. So it adds up. Another thing about the fifth scales that I have found, not necessarily with these, a little bit with the Rampage, but not necessarily with these, but the part support on the internet, online, is not very good for less known brands. You know, FG, Smart Tech, Red Cat, or New Tech even as well. Not very many brands, not very many places carry them, so it's hard to find parts for them. There are a couple websites that I order parts through for my Rampage, and there's only one that I order through for my fifth scale because I got a discount through them. But besides that, it is very hard to find parts for them. If you're going to find parts for them, you got to find a website and you stick with them. And that's, I think, about it that I can think of for the cons for them. So if you guys have any questions, post them on down below. And if you guys like this video, think it's going to help anybody, give it a share. And if you guys like this video in general, check out my other videos. And if you like those, subscribe. And we'll see you guys later.